Through a disclaimer first. My name is Benjamin Ramo. I'm the organizer of Eos Io Hong Kong Meetup Group and your MC for the night. I'd like to make it clear that I'm an active member of the Eos community. However, I am not employed or affiliated with block.one in any way. I'd like to start with a reminder that blockchain is a new technology with inherent risks as well as possible benefits. Different blockchain protocols and configurations work differently, so pay careful attention to the specific blockchain and its features and functions. I always recommend that you study carefully before utilizing anything. Eos Io software will be a free product and development platform that all developers can use to develop, run, and govern decentralized applications. This presentation does not constitute technology, financial, investment, legal, or other advice, nor does it apply to any particular situation or implementation. Please consult with experts in appropriate areas before implementing or utilizing anything contained in this presentation. This presentation and any comments made at the event does not constitute an offer to sell or the solicitation of any offer to purchase the EOS ERC20 compatible tokens, the EOS tokens, or any recommendation of the EOS tokens, nor is this presentation an offer, solicitation, or sale of the EOS tokens in any jurisdiction or to any person in which or to whom such offer, solicitation, or sale would be unlawful or is prohibited. No information regarding the EOS tokens or the ongoing EOS token distribution will be provided or discussed at this event. Thank you very much. Now, I'd like to introduce to you a very special person. His name is Ian Grigg. He is the author of EOS, An Introduction. He's also been in financial cryptology space since 1995, where he's had a startup which was taking bonds and issuing and trading bonds and digitizing them through contracts. He then went on to digitize cash, precious metals, identity, social savings. He's currently working on many exciting projects, and one of them is EOS. Ian?
Thanks. Hey there, my name's Ian Grigg. I've been working with EOS, working on the governance, just waiting for the slides to come up. Here we go, excellent. All right, I want to talk about two things. The governed blockchain, which is what we're presenting as our vision for EOS in a complicated world. And also I'm going to talk later about being a block producer, what it takes to become a block producer, just to see if we can spark some interest in that. But for now, the governed blockchain. Okay, know all about me. Disclaimer, the other guy's disclaimer was better than mine. So let's build a blockchain. What does it take to build a blockchain? So we want the blockchain for everybody, and we kind of have to figure out what that means. So we have to go back to first principles and think about, what does everybody do? Who is everybody? And what is it, the thing that they need? And can, of course, we provide it? And the answers to this, our assumption is that everybody are traders. And therefore, the blockchain for trade is what we need. So what do we do if we're building for business, building for trade? Well, we know that we can put businesses on a blockchain because it's been done. We've got Steemit and we've got BitShares, and they're both businesses which work in a fundamental sense on the blockchain. And if you map them out in their quadrants, they're very, very different businesses, but they're both using the same principles. So we've got good principles and a wide open space between them. So that's opportunity. If we summarize the way blockchains work to date, we've got two basic forms, unpermissioned blockchains and permissioned blockchains. The unpermissioned blockchains are basically designed to do simple automation only. They use this metaphor of a smart contract to do code, to organize simple contractual mechanisms to work. And consequently, as a sort of response to the simplicity of the code that is out there, you see a lot of attention in the blockchain community on things like smart contracts and external Oracle-style logic to feed information in, multi-sig, ZK snarks, all this wonderful, wonderful stuff. But when it comes to actual business, what we really see is a bit of a wild west. We see anarchy. And to control this, permissioned blockchains, which are favored by banks and large institutions, they try and create an alternate, which is this permissioned blockchain, which works from the basis of creating what we call a walled garden. You can get in if you're permitted in. Now, the problem that occurs with the walled garden is that having been allowed in, you end up having to be exposed to a gatekeeper. A wall always has a gate, and the gate always has a gatekeeper. And now the gatekeeper will eventually decide to raise fees as time goes on. So eventually you get this situation where the fees are going up, the insiders are controlling the situation, the rules are changing to suit the insiders, and the small business gets locked out. And after a while you get what Michael Manelli calls indolence, corruption, because of this sense of cartelization. Now, we do agree between these two permissioned and unpermissioned things that the blockchain provides us with automation at the bottom. What we don't agree with is what happens above the blockchain layer. So what does a small business do in that circumstance? To answer that, we need to figure out what it is that business actually does. And of the different businesses that are out there, there's kind of options. If you are a very large mega corporation, your best opportunity is to do exactly what you're doing now. Stick where the money is. If you are a high net worth individual, your best opportunity is to buy assets and hold them. Whereas for the rest of us, if we're not the mega corporation, if we're not the high net worth individual, we have to trade. We have to trade to do business to make profits. And we tend to, the smaller business we are, the smaller the business, we have to trade more and more into complexity. And there's a very interesting reason for that. Where there's complexity, there's lots of errors, which leads to unpredictability. And if it's unpredictable, that means there's a need to take care. And your customer wants you to take care and will pay you more profits to take care in an unpredictable world. If it was the other way around, if it was simple, it would be automated and the small business would be squeezed out of the business. So we like complexity, we like errors, we like a risky business. But we don't like too much. In the unpredictability, the world of unpredictability, there's a lot of things can go wrong, and especially if you talk about blockchain, there's all sorts of bad things going on, as I'm sure you know. So one way to think about unpredictability is risk. We're essentially doing risk management. How do we do this? If we think about, for example, insurance, we can cover the risk. If we think about security, we can avert the risk, reduce the risk from actually happening. Once the risk has come through and happened, we can think about legal situations such as courts to resolve it. The businessman gets used to that process eventually. But what does IT think about risk? And we can go through certain standard risk models, talk about big risks and small risks and so forth. But I like this particular diagram, which leaves us with a very big risk that happens very infrequently. It's got a lot of cost, but it happens very infrequently. The problem with that is because we don't see it very often, we believe it's not going to happen, and the IT industry is poorly prepared for this sector. What we don't see, we don't code up. Now, we call these the black swans. They're only happening in theory, they never happen in practice, but it turns out the blockchain has a lot of these going on, an awful lot of them. And I'm sure you've read about all these, so I won't go through them. How does the entrepreneur face the black swan, face this thing where going into the blockchain means that they would put all their capital in there at risk and discover that tomorrow all this money they've spent, all these developers they've employed, all of the effort they've put in, the cash and the time, has gone to naught because their business has been raided by one of these black swans? I would put it to you that the question is, why would an entrepreneur invest in a business on blockchain if there were black swans? And I would say that the big money in the world is sitting on the sidelines because of this problem, because blockchain is too dangerous in the perception of the ordinary businessman. So therefore, our proposition is that the blockchain for business is the blockchain that solves the black swan. I'll move on quickly here. So how do we solve for this black swan? Probably the answer is going to be something to do with trust. And we know that the problem with trust is that we need many trades. Game theory and various theories tell us that we need lots and lots of rounds with no end in sight. It's got to keep going. It's got to be business that keeps going. We've got to have shared profit in every round, and we've also got to have a mechanism for punishing people who've done the wrong thing. If something goes really wrong and we know that somebody's being aggressive, there needs to be a way to control that process. So we're in it for a lot of trades, not just today's trade, but every trade. And we can also look at this from different theories. Negotiation theory says that we want win-win, not win-lose. Game theory says we want a net positive game, not a zero-sum game. It turns out that the entrepreneur in blockchain today wants these things at the top, win-win, net positive game, but they get win-lose. They get a zero-sum game. So we agree that we probably want to win in terms of productive trade. We want to win above the line. But how do we do that? And it turns out it's a little bit harder than we think. If you look at the way blockchains work today, and now we're talking about Ethereum and Bitcoin and so forth, they've actually been very successful in the zero-sum or win-lose game. The automation that has happened below the line has been so successful, the community has thought or believed or assumed that that's the way everything should be. We should be doing win-lose above the line. We should be doing zero-sum games. But in practice, that's not how business is. This is how the blockchain community behaves. So currently, if you look at the businesses that are out there, the dApps and so forth, they are actually zero-sum games, most of them. If you think about, for example, currencies, ICOs, they're moving money from one place to another. Gaming is moving money from one place to another. And if you think about that, basically you're not actually creating or producing any new value. In comparison to, say, Steam, which is creating new value by distributing the good posts of people to other people. That is actual new value. Because of this effect that win-lose is what we want, the zero-sum game is what we're building for, we have created a toxifying effect in blockchain. For example, if you want to get ahead in a trade, well, let's do a DDoS, and that happens all the time when the auctions are closing. If you want to get ahead with a contract, you can hack the contract, and there are no consequences to this. So over time, this builds up to be a normal sort of behavior. So, okay. Whereas an entrepreneur actually wants the alternate. The entrepreneur wants a business where they can deal with people and build profits, not extract profits. Okay. So just to summarize what we're looking for this repeated no end of insight. We want to remember who we are dealing with. We need rules of the game, and we need a way to train. That's that blockchain thing and the smart contracts and so forth. And we need a way to hold the aggressor to account. And if that's our complete list, that doesn't quite look like ordinary unpermissioned blockchains like Ethereum and so forth, but it also doesn't look like the permissioned blockchain. There's no wall there. The walled garden has those features down the bottom, a set of rules, a method of applying rules, consequences, and so forth. And then up the top, there's that wall and the gate and the gatekeeper and fees and more fees, indolence and corruption to follow. So if we compare these two worlds side by side, we find actually the three requirements down the bottom are the same thing, but the ones at the top are different, which allows us to say the wall is the problem. Let's tear down the wall. We don't need it. What we do need to add is a way of knowing who we're dealing with because of this notion of doing rounds of trade after trade after trade. So we need to know who that person is. But the identity topic is a really big topic, a really important topic, but it's way beyond the scope of today. So how do we build this governed blockchain? Well, we do it in two layers. We need a set of rules, constitution, and that constitution applies when you enter into the blockchain. So what happens, technically speaking, is that the transactions that you send to the blockchain include a copy of the constitution by means of a hash of the document. That's that cryptographic message digest thing, the big, long, scary number. That goes into the packet, and that indicates you have agreed to the constitution. Now, having agreed to the constitution, we have now defined a community. The community is the people who have agreed to the constitution, which means if you are in the community, and I am in the community, I can rely on you having agreed to the constitution. That's really useful. And then the architecture that we've adopted, this delegated proof of stake, which I'll talk about a little bit more in the next section, allows us to do several things. It offers referenda. A referendum can be created to appoint a role. It can be created to change the code or to change the constitution. It's important to understand you, the community, having agreed to the constitution and joined the EOS blockchain, will be able to change your own constitution. You get to own the constitution. It also allows us to set arbitration and appoint arbitrators to solve problems. So, in summary, the entrepreneur is looking for win-win, but the entrepreneur gets win-lose. How do we reverse that situation? Well, the unpermissioned one, the unpermissioned blockchain, is more about the construction of zero-sum win-lose trades. It's about taking the value from the other person. And this is not really a good mix. Whereas the permissioned one concentrates on blocking people out, and the ones that are inside can agree to trade. But the problem is, actually, all the good trade is small business. You can't have a vibrant, growing economy without small business. So we want the freedom of one, but the protection of the other. And EOS is that third choice, the governed blockchain. And in essence, what we have is the rules of behavior as provided for by the Constitution, and we have free entry from the unpermissioned blockchain. Free entry is still preserved, so we now have the best of both worlds. And the difficulty here is that wall. The fallacy is that we need a wall. Actually, we don't need a wall. What we need is controls. Okay, the governed blockchain, it's produced of 2 layers. The bottom layer, if you like, is the members agreeing to the Constitution on entry, which sets the basic norms of behavior. On top of that, we can use those rules to resolve the difficulties that we call the black swan. We can have arbitration to resolve problems. We can appoint producers. We can make changes to the chain. And the point of all that is smart business. Thank you. That's... And I don't get to leave yet because I've got to talk about block producers. That's part 1, now on to part 2. Okay, block producers. So, delegated proof of stake. A little bit more about that. Proof of work indicates, proof of work assumed that everybody was known. Now, if everybody is known, unknown, everybody's unknown. When people are unknown, we have to control them by this mechanism called hashing. It's got to be done through cryptography and probability. And it's really quite difficult and very expensive. But we can reverse that. What happens if we know everybody who's going to be a block producer in a community context? And this is what DPoS, or delegated proof of stake, does. It assumes that we know who the block producers are, and it then splits the job into 2 different layers. When we know who the block producers are, we can actually construct software which is very efficient. But the problem, of course, is that a block producer could then produce a bad block. So we need a way to correct for that process. And DPoS, with its 2 layers, the first layer is the production layer, and in this we've got 21 block producers in a ring, and this is a number that was found from experience with BitShares and Steemit. If you go too much higher, it starts to get very inefficient. If you go too much lower, you start to lose the benefits of decentralization. So 21 is a good number. Each producer in turn produces 1 block to make a round, and at the end of every round, we shuffle that round. Then on top of that, we create the governance layer. And this is the notion where the community, because we defined the community earlier with the Constitution, the community places its EOS into stake, and it therefore can now vote for its block producers. Every round, there's a new election. This is every minute, so you don't actually get to see this happening because you're not paying that much attention, but it's all happening in the software, so every minute there's a chance to vote in and out the block producers. It's been proven in BitShares and Steem. BitShares itself has been running for 3 years now, and we're improving the mechanism in eosio, but it's essentially the same thing as far as block producers are concerned. With the addition of the Constitution, the block producer is in agreement, is a party to the Constitution, and with the addition of arbitration, the block producer likewise is under arbitration. So what does the block producer actually do? Well, 5 things in sequence. Builds a server, standard internet machine, installs the software, and configures it for block production. Then just join a network. There are several test networks available to play around with, or you join up with some buddies or something like that, and then you produce blocks. That's all it is at a technical level. There's a bit more to it, though. Self-governance is very important. 1 block producer amongst 21 could decide to do something wrong, could decide to let through a bad transaction. This bad transaction would then be followed by other block producers or not. So 1 block producer, if seen to be pushing an invalid block, will probably be rejected by the following block producers. For something to go through, we need a 2/3 majority, which means we need quite a few block producers to cohort or to conspire to create a bad transaction. So then we need a sense of block producers coming together and actually deciding, because there's going to be some times, such as code changes or constitution changes or various other things, where we do need the block producers to approve a message which was not acceptable purely to the software. And for this purpose, they will run their own forum. The block producers will be chatting to each other and watching what's going on, so when something pops up, when a new change is needed, they can talk about that and reach that 2/3 majority and start to make it happen. But the community is sitting there watching. Ultimately, the block producers are covered by the Constitution and they have to follow the rules. The Constitution will select and create or authorize a manual for the block producers, which will give them their precise documentation. Now, to a large extent, they'll be able to change their manual, but to get the manual changed, they'll then have to put it back to the community to vote it through. So they're not entirely in control of their destiny, but certainly at the detail level, they'll be looked at to rewrite their manual from time to time. They'll also have to deal with rulings, resolve any disputes. The rulings will tell them to do things like accept a bad transaction in the network. And occasionally, law will pop up as well at the individual block producer level. There are exceptions where they will actually have to allow transactions to go through. 3 exceptions. Emergencies will happen. At that point, it's an emergency, it's happening fast. The block producers shall be expected to talk amongst themselves and rapidly put in place a change. And now we're talking about something like the DAO, or a major theft, or something's gone wrong, such as blocks are starting to compete with each other. That won't happen very often. Then the community will sometimes vote on a change to the code or the Constitution, and that will require the block producers to confirm that change. And finally, arbitration will provide a ruling, and that ruling will instruct block producers and others, potentially, to make certain changes. So all of this is mediated by this internal forum that they run. Let's talk about incentives. The block producers get paid in rewards from the system. Each time they print a block, they get a small slice of rewards. For that payment to stick, it must get through the 2/3 majority. If it doesn't get through a 2/3 majority, if their block is kicked out, then they don't get paid. So there's a good incentive to make sure you're following the right recipe. The total amount of incentives paid out to the block producers is limited in the Constitution. There'll be a line that says block producers get paid X% per year divided across the field. We've talked about 5% in the past. Recently, there's been a discussion about 1%. So how much is that? Let's use a scratch pad here. I don't know what the price of EOS is, but let's say it's $6. That gives us about 6 billion from 1 billion tokens, which means about $300 million per year, 15 million per block producer per year. And the thing that should strike you is that's a lot of money. It's actually way too much. It's way too much money. Even if it was 1%, $3 million a year, that's too much. So we have a surplus. What are we going to do with that surplus? We're going to return the surplus, the excess money, back to the community, which is going to propose worker proposals, and these will be voted in order, and the block producers will be invited to share the extra with the worker proposals. Now, we have to recall that the community can vote out the block producers at any time, so we have this feedback loop whereby the community watches how much the block producers are returning, which they decide themselves. But if block producers vote to keep too much money, the community will say, this is not good enough, we'll vote you out, we'll put in some block producers which are more efficient. How much, we can compare this question of how much money to the cost base of a block producer. So what's it going to cost to run a block producer? Well, I could do it at home with a fiber link on a Mac Mini, at least for a while, and that's going to cost me about $1,000 per year. But there are some people who are putting together redundant data centers, and they're employing professional DevOps and lawyers, and they're putting huge machines in place, and this might be costing them $1 million a year. How much is it going to cost? We don't know. It's going to be somewhere between a big number and a small number, and this time next year we'll have a much better idea. So your guess is as good as anybody's guess. Decentralization is really important. There is an assumption in DPoS, and in proof of work, and in all of these systems, that it has to be decentralized. Decentralization is there for a purpose. It solves for lots of attacks. If there is only one server or a few server, there's lots of ways to attack the system. And there's a list of them. We don't need to go through them. You're familiar with them from the literature. Most of these risks are solved by software and cryptography and careful design, but every one of these designs today in a blockchain assumes decentralization and independence. So we're looking for diversity in block producers. We need to diversify across internet connections, across the physical locations around the globe. We would like to diversify the jurisdictions so that we get fairness across the globe. Cultures, different cultures can be also come into it, because in practice what happens is opposing cultures will give us more strength than cultures that are completely aligned. So there are 200 countries out there. We'd love to hear from all of them. There's lots of continents. There's different fashions of law which are competing. And there's also the sense of technologies. We've got the possibility in the future of different code bases, different styles of machines. Does anybody remember Spectre and Meltdown? They attacked and compromised every machine architecture except one. The Raspberry Pi, the smallest of the machines, was not affected by those guys. So we want that resilience. And we want independence, which means that the developers and the arbitrators and the block producers and any other important role should not be the same. Now, does this mean that these people cannot run two jobs? I would say so, but as a community member, I would vote that way. And we have to find the balance. What we're looking for is a sense that independence is required for important roles where all of our community, our businesses, our money is on the line. Here's a quick sense of how-to, not very well filled out. Basically, go and join that list there, EOS Pros on Telegram, and ask them the questions. There is a how-to, which I haven't got there. Build a team to do this. This is not something you can do easily by yourself. I would, but you shouldn't. And join a subnet and get going. And good luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian. So now I'd like to introduce to you Shawn Mitchell. He is our lead developer relations engineer. Please welcome Shawn to the stage.
Thank you, Ben. All right, so let's get this out of the way. I know you are all really, really excited about blockchain. The good news, our tech is really, really good. The bad news is you're going to have to listen to me talk about it for the next 10 to 15 minutes. So I do apologize in advance. I'm proud to announce that Dawn 3.0 was released today, April 6th, 2018. Couldn't be more excited. Dawn 3.0 marks our first feature-complete developers release. It boasts improvements in scalability, security, and greatly improves the developer experience. eosio has been built from the ground up to scale to market needs. It accounts for future scaling by utilizing parallel computation to accelerate throughput without a hard fork. At present, Dawn 3.0 only implements a fraction, a very small fraction, of those optimizations that will enable eosio to scale. The blockchain industry has been attempting to solve this with solutions such as sidechains, plasma, and sharding. Our response to this problem is to enable Eos Io blockchains to communicate in a provably secure manner. We have solved inter-blockchain communications by enabling implementation of Light Client as a smart contract. For us to achieve this, we've implemented features that facilitate inter-blockchain communication at the protocol level, not as an afterthought. One of these features is sparse header validation. Traditionally, Light clients are expected to process every block header and then validate proofs as validation. Because Eos Io can generate 2 blocks every second, an interoperating blockchain would be expected to process at least 2 transactions per second. Requiring this would have too high of an overhead for any chain wishing to interoperate with an Eos Io chain. Our response to this problem is the first ever blockchain to implement Byzantine fault-tolerant sparse header validation. Light clients only need to process block headers when the set of active block producers has changed, which makes the Light client easier to maintain and drops overhead with an acceptable range. When it comes to network security, 2/3 or more of the block producers would have to be bad actors in order to mislead or deceive a Light client. Context-free actions are a key feature. They enable efficient inter-blockchain communication. They're special in that they can be included in a transaction, but do not depend on the blockchain state. A good example of this is the validation of a Merkle proof or signature. Because these actions are context-free, they can be validated in parallel and expensive computation pruned from replay. Context-free actions can be run in parallel, and their efficiency greatly contributes to the efficiency of inter-blockchain communication. These actions also make various privacy techniques more feasible. This was a feature many developers were asking for, and it was slightly difficult, as the associated actions can be pruned and ran in parallel. This means that confidential transactions, bulletproof, ZK snarks, they're more feasible with the Eos Io block architecture. The use of context-free actions will also be incentivized, as block producers will only charge users a fraction of the CPU usage when a calculation is performed as part of a context-free action. A feature strongly desired by developers was an efficient method to generate events that could be processed by outside sources. So think of this as a way for the contract to communicate outside of the blockchain or interoperability. Because these actions can be ran inline, and what I mean by that is from a contract, a pattern can be employed where you can treat them as events. A context-free inline action can be processed cheaply and in parallel, because all inline actions are also included in the Merkle root. It's possible to use these actions as provable notifications to outside services. A good use case of a contract-free inline action would be displaying a confirmation message to a user on an interface or to trigger something on an outside service. Many transactions have data that can be easily compressed. Some obvious examples of this are compiled WebAssembly, a contract's ABI specification, the Ricardian contract associated to every account, and user-generated data from, say, something like social media. Compressed data is cheaper than uncompressed data, obviously, which incentivizes optimization by developers. This incentivization benefits the network's stakeholders, users, and block producers. Transaction compression more efficiently stores and transmits large numbers of transactions while also being more economical for the end user. One of the biggest changes from Dawn 2.0 is the abstraction of the WebAssembly runtime environment. For you non-techie people, that would be hard to explain. Sorry. The Dawn 2.0 runtime environment uses the just-in-time, or JIT, or JIT compiler, which was pretty fast. But it caused some problems. It caused delays when compiling the contract. So now, Dawn 3.0 utilizes the binary N WebAssembly interpreter by default. This design decision was not taken lightly. It has few implications, though. One, it reduces performance, but increases stability and standards conformance. Two, it enables swapping the just-in-time environment when needed. And three, it solves the delay associated to compiling a contract, which was the source of a lot of challenges in Dawn 2.0. In the future, we can use this interpreter to get a slower but lower latency execution of freshly deployed contracts, while in the background we compile and optimize it. This double implementation means that in the future, our unit tests can be tested against both compiled and interpreted code. This also enables the solving of any non-deterministic or non-standards conforming behavior before this hybrid approach is actually deployed to the blockchain. We have completely rethought rate limiting with Dawn 3.0. Previously, the goal was for block producers to employ a strictly subjective rate limiting and enforcement. In practice, we discovered that the costs of subjective rate limiting were nearly identical to the instruction counting. Our response to this is that users are billed for objective use, while block producers place subjective wall clock time limits on contracts. A block producer's subjective limit helps mitigate abuses of the objective rate limiting solution. This approach allows for a single transaction to execute many more calculations than was previously possible than with our subjective approach. The final change to rate limiting is the separation between limits from the need to define a token. This addresses the use case where Eos Io could be employed as a tokenless permissioned blockchain. With Dawn 3.0, we have dramatically reduced latency until confirmation by moving from a 3-second block interval to half a second. When combined with Byzantine fault-tolerant or BFT DPoS, or delegated proof of stake, transactions can be irreversible in under 1 second. It should be noted, BFT DPoS has not yet been implemented, but we do plan to implement it prior to the 1.0 release. So this one's pretty big. Eos Io BIOS has moved the majority of the blockchain business logic from the core code base into smart contracts. This change is really exciting for us because it enables blockchain critical logic to be updated by the community through consensus without requiring any changes to the code base, which can often result in a hard fork. Everything that makes an Eos Io delegated proof of stake, such as the token, voting, staking, and resource allocation, is defined in this system contract. The only functionality that remains implemented in the core blockchain code is the permission system. And it's this system that facilitates the creation of accounts, deployment of contracts, configuration of user permissions and authorities, and resource allocation. So this is what we've covered in terms of scalability. This was by far the most robust section. So recent hacks, phishing scams, these all highlight how important security is to a blockchain. To date, the attitude on security in the blockchain industry can be best described as unforgivable. It's this attitude that makes many technologies in this space so appealing to hackers and scammers alike. Security is a multidimensional problem that should factor in the risk of hacking, hardware failure, lost hardware, and lost passwords. Sorry. From day one, Eos Io has been designed to be the most secure blockchain on the market. And here are the features that help us achieve this. One of the most significant features of Eos Io Dawn 3.0 are security-delayed transactions. This feature enables a user to configure a delay for a particular action or set of actions, and this delay will dictate how long a specific transaction must be on the blockchain before it's applied to the blockchain state. A pending transaction affords an end user an opportunity to identify a suspicious transaction or series of transactions and empowers them to take the actions necessary to recover the affected account permissions before any real damage is done. On Eos Io, every account has at least two permissions: the owner permission and the active permission. The owner permission level can reset the active permission at any time. For example, if the active key were lost or stolen. The active key is primarily for transferring funds, voting, staking, etc. So let's say you lose your owner key. So on another blockchain platform, this would be pretty bad. I mean, you would lose your key, and within 5 minutes, everything in that account would be gone, and game over. On Eos Io, the account owner can request to reset the owner permission, as long as that account has been inactive for 30 days. After this progress has begun, the owner authority then has 7 days to challenge the reset request by updating the account's active authority. If they succeed, if you succeed in challenging that request, then the account would revert back to its state. Multi-signature transactions, I don't know how many of you have experience with them, but every blockchain has similar but different implementation methods at the same time. They've been traditionally difficult for end users, and their implementations have been tricky, to say the least. First, the transaction must be generated, then it's passed between all parties to be signed. Only once the required threshold is met can it be pushed to the network. And then, to make matters a little bit more confusing, in most cases, this needs to be done before the set expiry time. Eos Io greatly simplifies this process by enabling a user to propose a transaction to the network. Once proposed, other parties of interest simply need to approve it. Once the transaction has met the required signature threshold as defined by the account's permission, the transaction is applied to the blockchain state. If a user wishes to cancel or remove the transaction that was proposed, it simply needs to have not been approved and applied to the state yet, which means that if they made it by mistake, it could be canceled, or if they needed to make a change, it could be canceled and republished. So here are the topics we have covered for security. One of our many goals with Eos Io is to make contract development as simple as possible. So if a developer knows how to write a C++ class with methods, then they should be able to write a smart contract with as minimal of a boilerplate as possible. Our toolchain now handles ABI generation and dispatches actions to your class methods. We've managed to reduce our Hello World contract to an elegant 13 lines. One of the most difficult aspects of blockchain development the most difficult aspects of smart contract development has been the lack of support for floating point math. Many algorithms are much easier to implement and predictable in their behavior with floating point. Many computations are more error-prone and memory-intensive when they only rely on a fixed point math. We solved the non-deterministic nature of hardware floating point by integrating a software floating point library that is used transparently by smart contracts. With a software floating point implementation, we reap the benefits of determinism and ease of development, and at a cost only marginally higher than fixed point. For Eos Io Dawn 3.0, we placed a great deal of importance into supporting the majority of the C++ standard template library. This consideration enables developers to use the tools, libraries, and algorithms they are familiar with, while simultaneously eliminating the potential for bugs caused by non-standard implementations of those algorithms. Scheduled transactions are another really cool feature. They enable developers to write contracts that operate forever, assuming that they have the bandwidth to cover the resources that it requires. Scheduled transactions gain efficiency and ease of use for the benefits of developers without placing too much stress on the network. With some other smart contract platforms, developers often resort to off-chain solutions to achieve the same behavior. With Eos Io Dawn 2.0, every transaction was required to declare the data range that it wished to access. We found this to be cumbersome and error-prone for developers. Luckily for Eos Io developers, we were well aware of the problem and working towards a solution. With improvements implemented in Dawn 3.0, block producers are now responsible for determining which data ranges can be accessed and to deconflict them if necessary. This change benefits the developer, the user, and the blockchain by reducing transaction size and placing the responsibility of scoping on the block producer. No longer is this burden placed onto the user, developer, or full nodes. Dawn 3.0 introduces a brand new database API. This API mirrors the familiar multi-index container provided by Boost. We now support database tables that are sorted by multiple keys, use lower upper bounds, iterate forward and backward, and over the database, and can find items. It's also now possible to have indices on 64, 128, 256, and 512-bit integers, as well as 64-bit floating point doubles. Support for string indices is pending and will be added before 1.0 is released. This is a significant improvement in flexibility and ease of use and ease of development, as it is now possible to have an almost unlimited number of indexed fields on the same table. Eos Io Dawn 3.0 is a developer release designed to be feature complete with stable APIs. We believe the platform is now stable enough for serious application developers to start building their applications. Eos Io has become far more powerful and easy to develop than we had ever conceived even a year ago. Our team is growing and development is occurring at a rapid pace. We're excited and ready for a successful quality release of 1.0 in June. Thanks for listening to me, guys. See you next time.
Thank you very much, Shawn. We're very excited about Dawn 3.0. Now, I'd like to invite a good friend to the stage. His name is Josh Lavin from block.one. He's going to give you a couple of announcements. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Hi, everybody. Hi, everyone. My name is Josh Lavin. I work for block.one here in Hong Kong. First of all, I just want to say a special thank you to Ben Rameau and to Devin Pereira, who organized this meetup and gave us an opportunity to come out and speak to all of you here and to everyone watching on the live stream. We're very excited to be here and to be able to talk about some of the exciting things that are happening, not just in the technology, but also in the overall community. When we take a look at where we are with blockchain and with Eos Io right now, I feel we're faced with a unique opportunity. For the very first time in the last few months, we're starting to see that regular users of centralized internet businesses and platforms are starting to realize that their data is not secure and that these businesses cannot be trusted. We believe these businesses must evolve and must adapt into a decentralized version, or ultimately they're going to be replaced by somebody who gets there first. At the same time, while promising, the reality is that the blockchain industry is not ready to handle the millions upon millions of users who are going to rapidly be fleeing out of these centralized solutions. The existing solutions today don't provide the speed, support, and most importantly, the developer-friendly environment that's necessary for projects to truly succeed. block.one's mission is to deliver on the promise of the blockchain. And fundamentally, that means creating decentralized applications that regular people can use without realizing they're interacting with the blockchain. Our first step was to begin working on the Eos Io blockchain software, which we believe is uniquely suited to support a full range of decentralized application developers, from tinkerers who are just getting started on their very first project to enterprise-grade software. But the reality is, it's not enough to have the best technology. We need to put that technology into the hands of developers, and they need to find value with it. So tonight, we're going to talk about some of the things that we're doing to make sure that block.one gets developers to love Eos Io. So how do you get a developer to love a technology? Well, the first step, of course, is excellent technology. And Shawn's just gone through some of the great things that we've done so far on the eosio blockchain software. But just as important is to have a healthy developer ecosystem. And almost as important is opportunity. We believe at the center of all of these things is Eos Io. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing to create a healthy developer ecosystem. It's a pleasure to welcome up to the stage Serge Medellin, who's the head of developer relations.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Josh. First of all, I wanted to thank you all for coming. What a great turnout. So let's talk a little bit about what the healthy developer ecosystem actually means. We see it as a combination of a few factors. Firstly, learning of the new cutting-edge technology should be intuitive, and the documentation should be set in place for an easy learning curve and clear understanding of what the product is. Secondly, developers who do have questions, they need to have some sort of a forum to be able to ask the questions and get them answered in a timely manner. Thirdly, developers are heard, so that's really important. If developers have some sort of a vision or they have offers on how to improve the platform, they need to have some sort of a platform to be able to offer their ideas and to be visible by the core developers of the platform. So these are the components of the healthy developer ecosystem that the healthy developer ecosystem should have. If they're all in place, the developers enjoy the journey so much that they themselves become ambassadors and they share their knowledge with others, creating a network effect. That's how we know that we are successful. Within our organization, we have two main parties. On one side, we have Eos Io core developers, and on the other side, we have third-party application developers and their community. To facilitate the connection between the two and make sure that the journey is as smooth as possible, our organization introduces Developer Relations Business Unit. Its operations are based on three main pillars. So first pillar is the community outreach, which means that our team participates in the events, meetups, hackathons, and other community-driven events, increasing our reach to new developers, at the same time, keeping the conversation with our existing developers through personal communication. The second pillar is the technology and educational partnerships. We see this pillar responsible for the relationships with the strategic partners such as universities, consultancies, certification centers, etc., as well as creation of developer-friendly third-party content. And the third pillar is the developer tools and support. This pillar is responsible for the creation of scalable content that developers can consume to get onboarded with the technology and guide them through that journey. The developer relations team is an interface between the community of the developers and the internal developers of the platform, creating a feedback loop and making sure that the parties are aligned and set up for the success. Talking about the third-party community, I don't know, guys, have you seen this website? Anyone? A few people? Yeah, great. So talking about our third-party community, this is a community-driven project that's been built by a community developer, Jan Langheimer from Canada, and it gives us a pretty cool sneak peek into what are the platforms that are currently built on Eos Io or are in development. It's a directory of projects based around the Eos Io, and the project owners can list their ideas, get some early followers, as well as get some initial feedback on their projects. It's a great project. Go and check it out to see what are the projects out there that are already building. Diving a little bit more into the list of the projects on eosindex.io, we can see some of the exciting project ideas that have been built. First of all, decentralized curated list of professionals and job opportunities, decentralized LinkedIn, a life management platform that informs decisions and enables better planning throughout your life cycle, the world's first blockchain-powered cyber threat detection solution, a dating app built on Eos Io, creating an evolving profile algorithm, and so many more. So we have quite a few exciting plans on how to support these projects and all the others. And I'd like to give you a tease a little bit about a few of our internal projects that we're working on in the moment within our developer relations unit. So first of all is the developer portal. It is a portal where developers can source all the documentation, tutorials, guides, reference for SDK, whatnot, and find all things developer. It's currently in the final stages of production and will go live hopefully shortly. The second program is the Eos Io Ambassadors Program. We encourage our engineers to attend events, meetups, speak at the conferences, and we are currently scaling our team, so you will see more and more of our engineers attending more and more events in the short future. Eos Io Stack Exchange. So it is an initiative to support a community-driven Q&A that will scale the developer-to-developer communication and also support the developers as they develop the apps. We will also allocate some resources to this website and make sure that it improves our documentation and as well as improving the product itself. Developers at block.one is a support portal. If you're a developer and have some technical questions, we encourage you to send an email with your questions to this email address. Then you will be assigned a ticket as well as an engineer to help you solve your problem. This is already live, and you can already use this portal as of today. Eos Io implementation proposals platform. So we are working on a forum to propose where developers can propose the changes or innovations for the Eos Io platform, and the core developers have visibility over what the community actually wants. That way, we make sure that the community is aligned with what the software will be in the future. Eos Io Bounty Program. It is a bug bounty program that is an open offer to external individual to receive a compensation for the reported bugs and fixing the issues with the software. Often mostly specifically relevant to the security or the core functionality of our blockchain. We are in planning stage at the moment of this platform, and the news will follow shortly. And hashtag #AskBlock.one. So hashtag #AskBlock.one is a social Q&A initiative that we have, and developers can, or just members of the community can ask all the questions that they have about the platform or about Block.one and hashtag them on Twitter with a hashtag #AskBlock.one. And we will curate the questions and pick 5 questions, and on a weekly basis, we will publish a video as well as an article responding to the community questions. So if you are as excited as I am about all the initiatives that we have currently at Block.one in developer relations space, please join our team. Please go and check out careers.block.one. We're hiring not just in developer relations. We're actually hiring across the board in many job titles. But I'm pretty biased about my team, so please come and join my team. So coming back to the slide that Josh spoke about opportunity, I would actually like to introduce Andrew Bliss, Chief Financial Officer of Block.one, to talk a little bit about the opportunities that our platform presents.
Thanks, Serge. In January, Block.one committed $1 billion USD to the Eos VC program. Our mission is to empower the entrepreneurs and developers that are building the next generation of decentralized applications using the Eos Io software. We've previously announced VC partnerships with Mike Novogratz at Galaxy Digital, Tomorrow Blockchain Opportunities, and FinLab. Today, we're excited to announce our next VC partner, and first in Asia. The partner is a tech entrepreneur and industry specialist who's been in blockchain for over 5 years. He previously founded the largest GPU mining facility in North America and has since shifted his focus to the Eos Io ecosystem. It's my pleasure to introduce Michael Cao.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. All right. So we're very excited here to announce our success. We worked very hard to put together $200 million US fund called EOS Global. And EOS Global is going to be exclusive to the EOS community and nothing else. And not only is EOS Global going to be focused on the EOS community, but we're going to have special partners with deep experience in Asia. And so I would just like to make this very brief and say, if anyone has any interesting projects, please email vc@block.one. So next, I would like to introduce Brian Mailer. He's going to have another interesting announcement.
Good evening. My name is Brian Mailer, and I'm part of Block.one's EOS VC program. As Andrew mentioned, the mission of EOS VC is to provide resources directly to the growth and the facilitation of development of decentralized apps on the Eos Io platform. One of the ways we are achieving this goal is by establishing VC funds with partners such as Michael. Even with our VC partners, we knew we could do more and go further for the community that has shown their overwhelming excitement and support for us since day one. Therefore, we want to engage everyone in the community, in addition to the developers, by including UX and UI designers, the weekend coder, and even entrepreneurs who are excited about developing on the eosoi blockchain. To best achieve this initiative, we've been busy building something truly great. and are ecstatic to announce the launch of the EOS Global Hackathon. As you can see, we are deeply serious and dedicated to this endeavor and are committing today $1.5 million in awards for this year's hackathon series. We want to give back to those that have been a part of our community since day one and been leaders in helping build the Eos Io platform. The EOS Global Hackathon will bring together our community members all over the course of 4 events and will culminate in a grand finale, Demo Day, showing off the 3 winners from each of the previous events in front of an awesome panel of judges to compete for the grand prize. We want to ensure that the hard work and dedication of participants is rewarded and set a grand prize of $500,000 to the team that wins the Demo Day. In addition to this award, we will be inviting the winning team to sit down with the block.one leaders and arrange one-on-one meetings with the EOS VC partners. We are also going to bring in some special resources to help support these teams at our hackathons. We'll be utilizing the leaders of our VC partners, our developer relations teams, pioneers in the blockchain space, and serial entrepreneurs to be on hand at the event to serve as mentors and coaches to help teams over the weekend as they build new decentralized apps that will be sure to change and impact the world of the future. As the name implies, we're bringing EOS Global Hackathon around the world. To kick things off, we'll be starting here in Hong Kong this June, before jumping to Sydney and heading over to London. There are a few more exciting announcements in store for the community and future location announcements, so be sure to check out our website, eoshackathon.io, for more information and to register today for any of the first 3 hackathons. But we aren't done just yet. I'm going to have Serge and Josh come on stage to give one final dev relations announcement for the community.
Thanks, Brian. So we are not forgetting about our community developers and the contributors to our core code of our Eos Io software. So I would like to say thank you, and our team would like to say thank you to the top contributors to our Eos Io platform, and would like to thank you with inviting them to our first hackathon that will happen in Hong Kong in June, and it will be a paid trip, a stipend trip to Hong Kong. So who are the 5 lucky and very hardworking developers who will join us in Hong Kong? Let's give a round of applause to these guys. Woo! So we will reach to them separately. It's actually a surprise for them as well. But participate in our ecosystem, build code, and you will get some amazing things out of it.
Click. Thanks, everybody. That's the end of the announcements for tonight. Just a quick recap for everything that's going on. If you are a developer and you're interested in getting in touch with the developer relations team, you can email us at developers@block.one. If you have a project that you're interested in applying to the EOS VC program, please contact us at vc@block.one. To register for the EOS hackathons, the first of which is going to be right here in Hong Kong in June, eoshackathon.io is the website. And if what you've heard tonight excites you and the project is something that you find interesting, please find us at careers.block.one to apply for open positions. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Thanks for everybody who joined us on the live stream. I'm going to turn it back to Ben to give some closing remarks. And thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much, everybody. If you'd like, this is hopefully the first of many meetups for Eos Io that we're going to have in Hong Kong. I look forward to connecting with all the rest of you, and let's together build a great community. You can follow us on Twitter at eos_io_HK or on Telegram at eos.io/Hong Kong. Thank you very much. For those who have got headsets, please leave them in your chair, and look forward to catching up with you later. Thank you very much.